The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink as Flight 92 prepared for takeoff. Inside the bustling cabin, passengers settled into their seats, unaware of the journey that lay ahead. Some chatted animatedly, others lost themselves in the glow of their screens. The hum of the engines grew louder, a familiar and comforting sound. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking," came the smooth, reassuring voice of Captain Mitchell. "We're expecting a smooth flight this evening. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey." The plane lifted off, soaring into the darkening sky, leaving behind the twinkling city lights. For a while, the world seemed at peace, the only sounds the gentle hum of the engines, and the occasional clink of a drink being served. But peace is often fleeting. Midway through the flight, the tranquility was abruptly shattered. Without warning, the plane jolted violently, sending a ripple of panic through the cabin. The seatbelt sign flashed on, and a collective gasp echoed as passengers clutched their armrests. "This is your captain again." Captain Mitchell's voice, though calm, carried a hint of urgency. "We've hit some unexpected turbulence. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." In the cockpit, alarms blared ominously. Co-pilot Sarah's eyes darted across the instrument panel. "Captain, we're losing altitude. The left engine is failing." Captain Mitchell's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Initiate emergency procedures. We're going to get through this." As the plane shook and trembled, fear spread like wildfire among the passengers. Mothers clutched their children, couples held hands tightly, and strangers exchanged looks of shared anxiety. The once peaceful cabin was now a cacophony of whispered prayers and stifled sobs. "Brace for impact." Captain Mitchell's command cut through the noise, snapping everyone to attention. The ground rushed up to meet them with terrifying speed. The impact was jarring, a bone-rattling thud as the plane skidded across a field. Luggage flew from overhead compartments, and screams filled the air. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the chaos subsided. The plane had come to a stop, tilted awkwardly but largely intact. Smoke and the acrid smell of fuel filled the air, but there was no fire. A miraculous outcome given the circumstances. "Everyone stay calm." A flight attendant's voice rose above the murmurs, steady and composed. "Follow the lights to the nearest exit." Passengers stumbled out into the cold night, their breaths visible in the chilly air. They gathered a short distance from the wreckage, shivering not just from the cold but from the shock of what had just occurred. Captain Mitchell and Sarah emerged from the cockpit, their faces etched with concern but also relief. "Is everyone accounted for?" Captain Mitchell asked, his eyes scanning the group. A flight attendant nodded. "We did a head count. Everyone made it out." A wave of relief washed over the survivors. Injuries were tended to with the limited supplies available, and those in shock were comforted by their fellow passengers. In the face of disaster, a sense of unity and resilience began to take root. Hours passed, each one feeling like an eternity. The cold seeped into their bones, and fatigue weighed heavily on their eyelids. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, there was a glimmer of hope. The distant sound of helicopters grew louder, signaling that help was on the way. As the rescue teams arrived, bringing warmth, medical aid, and the promise of safety, tears of relief flowed freely. Captain Mitchell and Sarah were among the last to be evacuated, ensuring everyone else was safe first. Their dedication and composure had been a beacon of hope throughout the ordeal. As the survivors were airlifted away from the crash site, a profound sense of gratitude filled the air. They had faced the unthinkable and emerged on the other side, bonded by an experience that would forever change their lives. "We made it," a passenger whispered, their voice trembling with emotion. "Against the odds, we survived." The plane that had once been a vessel of routine travel had become a symbol of resilience and hope. Flight 92's story would be told and retold, a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure and overcome even the most harrowing of trials. The horizon stretched out endlessly, cloaked in darkness, as Flight 92 hurtled through the night sky. Inside the cockpit, Captain Mitchell and co-pilot Sarah worked in tense silence, their focus razor-sharp. The left engine had failed, and the aircraft was losing altitude rapidly. The calm of the earlier flight was now a distant memory. "We're approaching critical altitude," Sarah announced, her voice steady despite the tension. "We need to find a place to put her down." Mitchell scanned the dark terrain below, his mind racing. "There!" He pointed to a clearing, barely visible in the moonlight. "It's our best shot. Prepare for an emergency landing." Sarah nodded, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. "Engaging flaps. Reducing speed. Landing gear deployed." Back in the cabin, the atmosphere was thick with fear. Passengers clung to their seats, bracing for the unknown. The flight attendants moved through the aisles, their voices calm but firm as they instructed everyone to assume the brace position. "Heads down! Stay down!" they repeated, their words a mantra against the growing panic. The ground loomed closer with terrifying speed. Mitchell's hands were steady on the controls, his mind focused on the task at hand. "Hold on, Sarah. We're almost there." The impact was sudden and brutal. The plane hit the ground with a deafening crash, the fuselage shuddering violently as it skidded across the field. Metal screeched and groaned, the sound of destruction filling the air. Inside, passengers were thrown forward, their screams mingling with the cacophony of the crash. The aircraft finally came to a halt, tilted awkwardly but miraculously intact. For a moment there was silence, a heavy, oppressive quiet broken only by the crackling of small fires and the soft cries of the injured. "We're down," Mitchell breathed, his hands still gripping the controls. He turned to Sarah, who was already unbuckling her harness. "Get the passengers out." "Now." Sarah nodded, her adrenaline-fueled focus unwavering. "Yes, Captain." In the cabin, the flight attendants sprang into action. "Everyone, stay calm. Follow the emergency lights to the exits. Leave your belongings behind. Move quickly but carefully." Passengers stumbled to their feet, some limping, others supporting those who were injured. The once orderly rows of seats were now a chaotic jumble, but the spirit of survival drove them forward. Mothers carried children, strangers helped each other, and a sense of unity emerged amid the wreckage. Outside, the cold night air was a shock to their senses. Survivors huddled together, their breaths visible in the chill. The distant sound of approaching helicopters brought a flicker of hope. Rescue was on its way. Captain Mitchell and Sarah were the last to leave the plane. They moved methodically, ensuring no one was left behind. The sight of their passengers, alive and huddled together, brought a wave of relief. "We made it," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Mitchell nodded, his gaze steady. "Against the odds, we survived." The rescue teams arrived swiftly, bringing warmth, medical aid, and the promise of safety. As the survivors were airlifted to safety, the weight of what they had endured began to sink in. The night had been long and harrowing, but they had faced it together. In the aftermath, stories of bravery and resilience would emerge. Flight 92 had not just been a flight, it had been a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Against the odds, they had survived, and their journey was far from over. The cold night air was a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded inside the cabin of Flight 92. Survivors stumbled out onto the uneven terrain, their breaths visible in the icy air. The plane lay tilted at a precarious angle, the faint glow of small fires casting eerie shadows across the wreckage. For a moment, there was only silence, the kind that follows in the wake of disaster. Captain Mitchell emerged from the cockpit, his face etched with determination and concern. He surveyed the scene, his mind already shifting to the next priority, ensuring everyone's safety. "Sarah, get a head count. We need to make sure everyone's out." Sarah nodded, moving swiftly through the crowd of shaken passengers. Her voice was calm but firm as she called out, "Everyone, gather here. We need to account for everyone. If you're injured, let us know." People began to cluster together, some limping, others supporting those who were worse off. Despite the shock and fear, there was a palpable sense of unity. Strangers offered hands to those who stumbled, mothers held their children close, and reassuring words were exchanged in hushed tones. A young woman approached Sarah, her face pale but resolute. "I'm a nurse. I can help with the injured. Sarah offered a grateful nod. Thank you. We need all the help we can get. Meanwhile, Mitchell was coordinating with the flight attendants, his mind racing through the protocols. We need to get everyone away from the plane. There's still a risk of fire. Move them to a safe distance. The group began to move, their footsteps crunching on the frosty ground. The moonlight provided just enough illumination to guide their way. Despite the chaos, there was a remarkable orderliness to their actions. Survival instincts had kicked in, and each person was doing their part to ensure the group's safety. In the distance, the faint sound of approaching helicopters brought a glimmer of hope. Rescue was on the way, but the immediate danger was far from over. Mitchell's voice carried over the murmurs, strong and steady. Stay together. Keep moving. We'll be okay. A sudden cry broke the night's quiet, drawing everyone's attention. A man had collapsed, clutching his leg in pain. Without hesitation, the nurse rushed to his side, assessing the injury. It's a fracture, she said, her voice calm. We need to splint it. Sarah knelt beside her, tearing strips of fabric from a passenger's coat to create a makeshift splint. You're doing great, she assured the man, her hands moving quickly but gently. The group watched, their fear momentarily replaced by a sense of awe at the resilience and resourcefulness of their fellow passengers. In the midst of chaos, humanity shone through. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as the survivors huddled together for warmth. The cold was relentless, seeping into their bones, but they drew strength from each other's presence. Stories were shared in hushed tones, words of encouragement passed from one person to the next. Mitchell and Sarah moved among them, checking on the injured and offering words of comfort. Their presence was a steadying force, a reminder that they were not alone in this ordeal. Captain, a flight attendant called out, her voice tinged with relief. The rescue team is almost here. We can see their lights. A collective sigh of relief swept through the group. The distant thrum of helicopter blades grew louder, a beacon of hope cutting through the cold night. The survivors stood, their spirits lifting as the reality of rescue sank in. As the helicopters touched down, rescue personnel swarmed the area, bringing warmth, medical supplies, and the promise of safety. The survivors were ushered towards the waiting vehicles, their exhaustion giving way to a profound sense of relief. Mitchell and Sarah were among the last to board, ensuring everyone else was safe first. As they lifted off, leaving the wreckage behind, a sense of gratitude filled the air. They had faced the unimaginable and emerged on the other side, bonded by an experience that would forever change their lives. We made it, Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Against the odds, we survived. Mitchell nodded, his gaze sweeping over the group of survivors. Yes, we did. And we'll carry this strength with us, always. The night had been long and harrowing, but it had also revealed the depth of human resilience and compassion. Flight 92's story was no longer just about a crash. It was a testament to the power of unity and the indomitable spirit of those who refused to give up.